Hello, WordNerds. Happy Sunday, and welcome to our monthly book club chat. This month, we're talking about The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. My version of the cover, right there. And this one's going to be interesting, I think. We've got some mixed feelings about this book, which I think makes for the best kind of chats. So we're going to jump in with our ratings of the book and kind of go from there. Erin, what did you think?
I'm going to say 4 out of 5 because I knocked off 1 star. Same with on Goodreads, just because of the romance, which is funny because I know that's what some of us liked the best out of it.
No, I liked the kissing scene,
right?
Not the romance.
Right. Okay.
All right, Emma, what about you?
Yeah, I give it like a 3.5. I really like the story. I don't necessarily like the storytelling. I thought it was a really interesting story and an interesting world, but there were some writing problems that I think should have been caught in the editing process that weren't. So,
Megan?
This is 3 stars for me. It was like really close to 3.5, but then the more I thought about it, I ended up giving it 3. I have lots of feelings about it, but I really, really liked a lot of parts of it. I really did. But I struggled with the relationship and with the storytelling. Yeah.
And Kelly.
It froze for me for a second, so I missed the end of what Megan said, but I think I get the idea. I will give this one a 4 stars. I definitely didn't think it was perfect, but I really enjoyed it. I've read it once, and I've listened to the audiobook once, and the audiobook narrator has an Irish accent, so that was just wonderful. I think that was a big part of what made me fall in love with the series in the first place.
I heard good things about the audiobook.
I really enjoyed the audiobook. So
Maybe I'll listen to the audiobook for book 2.
yeah, that's what I'm going to start. I was waiting until after this chat, and then I'm doing the audiobook for book 2 again. I think I'll keep going that way. I do think the cover's nice, but I won't miss it on my bookshelf. So yeah, good book, some issues. So before we started, Emma and Megan were talking about some things that maybe the publisher should have picked up. Do you guys want to start with that? Because I do think the writing was the weaker part. Like, it was a really good idea, but sometimes the execution kind of fell through.
That's so funny because I thought the actual writing itself technically was strong, but there was a lot of backstory. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the writing was technically fine. That's why we were kind of talking about. We can tell she's a good writer. Like, she has talent, but it was a lot of problems. That she's a debut author. She's 21, and it just felt like this maybe shouldn't have been the final draft, that there were problems in the way the story was told that should have been fixed, but maybe the publisher kind of rushed it because they thought it would be a big hit, and she was young, and it was cool to be able to say, oh, look, this 21-year-old girl with this really complex book, and maybe they should have spent more time on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it felt like not only was there a crap ton of backstory, that most of which I felt didn't need to be there, but there was also so much exposition. There was a part where I literally thought to myself, how can a girl who thinks so much make such rash and stupid decisions? It's for every big game changer, there was a full chapter of just thinking about the implications of what was happening. And I wanted it to move a little faster than that.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting because I didn't find the only reason I'm thinking about that now is because you said it. When I was reading it, that just did not even occur to me. I definitely felt at the beginning I was like, oh my god, this is a lot of information, about all of the different types of seers, I guess, and stuff, and the underworld and the mime lords, and I was just like, oh, okay, overload. And if somebody, and if somebody had sent that to me as a beta reader, I'd be like, cut all of this and sprinkle it through later. But then at the same time, I don't know what I would have said to them to fix it either, because I'm like, you kind of have to know some of it going into it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be completely confused.
Yeah, something I was telling Megan when we first got on was, I think, because there's a lot of writing advice out there, particularly for YA books, and a lot of it is don't spend too much time developing the backstory in the world, and just jump into the action and all this stuff. And I felt like she could have spent more time at the beginning, talking about Paige's life before she's captured, and just letting us get introduced to the world. Instead she just tried to dump the information really quickly and move on because she was like, oh, I don't want to spend too much time on this. and so it was all just like jumps so
Yes.
fast that I like couldn't comprehend it. And I was like, I would have rather she take more time to do that part.
So maybe it would have had to be like 2 books or something, because I can't imagine like if it was like half of it is page life, it would have to be really big.
Yeah, I don't think it should have been half of it, definitely not. But I think it was, we kind of just had like dumped on us like, this is her world, and then like a few chapters later, and this is the new world she's being dropped into. So it was
That's
like
very
a whole lot of both worlds, and we should have had a little bit more time to process.
There was a lot.
like maybe like the 2 weeks before she got captured or something, because it felt like all this is happening. She's on the train and she's killing people. But also, here's a little flashback to her life before, and I was very what is happening right now versus what is going on in her world.
That's actually one thing I did not like, as much as I liked the book itself, I really didn't like when they were in basically the concentration camp, and then she's having these flashbacks to like when she was like introduced to the gang and introduced to 2 new members of the gang, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about these people. I don't care about the past. I want to know what's happening now, and I'm just irritated that it's going back.
I cared. I liked the like information about her like supernatural mob life before, especially because we're going to be jumping into a lot of that with book 2. I expect.
It's true.
I'm glad I have some of that background rather than I hate books that are like change everything in book 2. I'm like, I don't know any of these people. I don't care about any of these people. So I'm glad I got some of that background. Maybe it could have been
I am glad I got
a
that
bit better.
I feel like that could have been remedied by starting a little earlier.
But then you get an entire book and you're like, okay, so you start to care about those people and then you change it. Like, I kind of agree with mixing them together because by the time you get to book 2, you haven't seen these people forever.
But these people do come in later in the book.
But while you're like fighting, not while you're like getting to know each other and can actually see people's personality. Although I did really like the going back into London scene. I did think that worked really nicely.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we just had like a brief, like a little bit more of an introduction to who the people were. Yeah, and then maybe have the flashbacks later on. But one thing I noticed is I didn't know who all 7 of the 7 seals were until like the very end of the book. Like because she like so slow, like flashbacks, you're like, oh, that's who like one of the people is. You know, like I knew who like 3 of them were halfway through.
This is really sad, but I read most of this book today. Like I was on page 30 when I got home from church at noon. And I read all of it. And so I was just like, it was so much information so fast that I would almost like to read it slower because I didn't even realize that her gang were the 7 seals. I was like, who are the 7 seals and what are they doing here? Why are
oh my god. It is a lot of information, especially if you're trying to read it fast.
Yeah. There's also a lot of nicknames. There's like 3 nicknames for each group of people, and I had a really
I hate that. Like, and it's probably more realistic. But a lot to take in when you're reading. Yeah. And it is such a different world, which is why I kind of justifies a lot of the exposition at the beginning. If you just jumped into the story, I'd assume it was a very different fantasy world than what it actually is.
Yeah. That's why I think she tried to jump a little bit too fast. I don't know.
I could have done with like a little more time developed like for the exposition.
Even if it's just like a couple more chapters. Like
especially because this is the kind of book that it straddles YA and adult, so you don't have to do that like full YA start exactly when the action starts.
Yeah, and not just that, it straddles YA and adult, and I feel like it also straddles sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah,
it's like
for
alternate future London.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like the what the heck were they called? The creature things that ran the concentration camp.
Started with an R.
Yeah. I felt like they were almost like alien to me rather than like third dimensional beings or whatever. Like they, to me, I pictured them as being an alien race, basically. So to me, it was a very sci-fi feel as well. So.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, that is.
Which I also think makes it like. When I initially started reading it, I was expecting one thing, and then that sort of twist, like, as much as it did give me a little whiplash jumping from one world to the next, I really liked that. Because
I love the darkness of the new world.
Yeah. And to me, it was just like, because I went in expecting, like, oh, yeah, okay, seers and mediums and palm readers, they have the secret society, okay, cool, but not super original. And then when this sort of like turn happened, and I was like, whoa, basically they've put together like concentration camps for these people, and they're being run by like these weird alien overlords, and I'm like, now I'm interested, because this I've never read before. Yeah,
so they had to kind of set up that whole clairvoyants are illegal, blah blah blah, in order to be
Right.
like, oh, whoa,
Yeah.
there's a reason, there's like a secret plot.
It's like a
behind the reason they're
conspiracy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
And like
Yeah,
you
that
said, in the second book, it does, like, you're back in London and dealing with that whole problem that she left behind. You needed that.
As much as like this book had problems, because of course, especially being such a young new author, it's going to have problems. Every book does, but like I can tell it's good because I want to read the next one. Like I'm going to go out and buy the next one. Whereas with a lot of books and in a lot of series, I'm just like, yeah, okay, that was good. I'm not going to go out of my way to go to the bookstore and get the next one.
That's so funny, because I was the opposite.
Oh,
Like,
really?
I'm like very book buying happy usually. Like if I like this mildly, I'll buy it. But this, I was like, I'll try the audiobook from the library. And
I really would
like
try the
that a lot.
audiobook. I definitely preferred it.
Yeah,
And it does pace out, like, I kind of wish you'd done the first one as an audiobook now, because it does pace out that information for you. a bit.
yeah. I really think my biggest problem, like personally, because the book obviously has some issues too, all books do, except for Harry Potter. But my biggest problem was just that I read it so fast, and this is a book that has so much information that it's not meant to be read that fast.
Overload, yeah.
Since you're not like dying to read the next one, and it is going to be a 7-book series, I'd say wait a few years, then go back and start again with the audiobook, because there's no rush.
I may do that, yeah.
You can still easily get caught up before all 7 books come out. So
Yeah, and I really want to know what happens next, because I know that her writing is just going to get better and better and better,
Oh,
and she's
yeah.
going to be phenomenal.
And you know that after the first book, she doesn't have to do all that world building.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that some people, like, I shouldn't look at Goodreads, like, reviews. I don't think anyone should, but I do. And, like, I know a lot of people were like, oh, I hated the character, blah, blah, blah. I actually really liked the character. I know that some people thought she was whiny, but I do like the character. I'm excited to, like, see how she develops and changes in future books. And if Warden comes back or not. Right? That was like one of the big questions at the end.
oh,
of the
he'll
book.
come back. He'll come back.
If he doesn't come back, then there was no point to that kiss scene.
Other than just make us mad that there weren't more of them.
That's so funny. Because I
was
definitely.
wondering. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it definitely occurred to me that I'm like, maybe the author is going to put those two together. But then I was just like, why in this fashion? Yeah, that's like something I was
I
reading
read in a
before.
review, so I knew they were going to get together.
Oh.
I already knew going in.
It was just
It
the
kind of
timing
obvious,
was
though.
weird.
Yeah, I kind of like figured it already, and then there's that whole scene where like she like lets him see
They're
her like, most
bonded.
embarrassing memory,
Yeah.
and he's
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about like, oh, humans are like water and clairvoyants are like oil, and she's like, what a riff
Oh,
I am. And
yeah.
he's like gasoline. I was like, oh yeah, this is totally gonna happen. Fire and oil.
Yeah, I totally agree with Aaron, though. They had, like, the worst timing in the world. They
was
spend
really-
hours and hours and hours alone together, and then they decide to start making out while they're
But
in
5
the
minutes
house.
before she's supposed to get killed.
I feel like
Yeah.
in novels like this, in fantasy novels, and especially in YA novels, this happens all the time, and it's something that I've ranted about. I should just write a blog post because I get so ranty. But it's always like this. They're like, we're on the run from like maniacal gun-toting aliens or something. Let's stop and like intensely make out. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, and it's die.
And it's totally always a tension thing, because like if they had started making out, 100 pages earlier when they were just like hanging out all the time, then there would be more of it, and you'd like be more satisfied, But this way, it's like, oh, they finally kiss, and then they get like ripped apart,
Like it does read more of a, oh crap, it's the end of the book. They have to kiss now, or they're running out of time.
Yeah.
I would have liked for a little more, like, since they did kiss so passionately or what, I would have liked for a little more indication that she was interested.
Yeah, that's
Like, I definitely got the vibe that he was interested.
Yeah, that's true.
from
Actually.
very early on. But
Yeah,
she's
that's
just like,
true.
oh, well, I can't turn him down.
Yeah,
Do you want to do this?
She's like, oh, he's a good kisser.
Yeah, like the
partly why I didn't feel like any attraction to him as a love interest, because she didn't like say anything. She didn't even be like, oh, he looks good in that shirt. Like there was nothing.
We don't really know what he looks like.
Yeah, which is
We just
why
know that
to
his
me I
eyes
was just
change
like,
color.
yeah,
Which felt
Why didn't
very,
they give you a-
very Edward Cullen to me.
yeah. I think they gave you a very brief description of him, like when he's first on the like dais and.
Yeah, cold
But-
eyes.
But yeah,
Very tall.
I could just I basically figured that he was going to be the love interest, so you just
Yeah.
picture him as good looking because they just fill in the gaps, whatever.
Yeah.
So, like every other book love interest ever.
Yeah.
But alien, sort of.
I had to like force myself to picture him as this like hot person because partway into like the kiss scene, I like remembered the description of him being very, very, very tall. And then on top of that, just understanding that he was 200, and I just started picturing old guy.
A giant old man.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And so I was like, no, he doesn't look like this. Picture more of a chiseled body right now.
I would have been way more into the kiss if the character, because you're like living through the character, right? If the character had shown some kind of like physical attraction to him, then I would have been like, yeah, but like there was nothing, so I.
But I bet with him, either there will be a different love interest, or we'll get more of that in the future.
Yeah, like I feel like I would have liked it better if they hadn't gone with the love interest connection with these two at all. But like, because it just seemed so predictable, and I would have liked more of a he wants to help because he genuinely wants to help, not because he likes her, and he did help before and all that. But it just felt like I'd rather him be that more of a Dumbledore figure and have a different love interest.
Yeah. I was really rooting for Nick. I know that he's in love with someone else, but I was like, you guys.
And Nick is also like 10 years older than her. She really likes older men.
Apparently.
Yeah, but see, 10
probably
years
more than that, 'cause
older is more manageable.
They met when she was like
17.
they met when she was what, like 9 years old, and he was like an adult and a doctor already.
When he was 9, he only would have been like 18 or 19. Because isn't he only like 7 or 8 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still kind of liked the twist when he's like, I like someone, and she's just like slowly realizing. I totally was like, oh, it's gonna be that chick or whatever, and then he.
Yeah.
spends the day
I was
like,
still rooting for them.
It's awesome.
Because I knew she liked him. That's probably why I was rooting for him, because there was some indication that she was interested in him.
Yeah. Rose commented that she liked the book, but felt a few of the characters were unnecessary. And now I cannot remember the name of the guy I want to bring up as an example of this, which kind of proves the point.
Seb.
The other...
I hated Seb. He was the poltergeist at the end. He got killed at the beginning of the New World.
He was the human that got killed.
Oh, I was thinking more of the other human that eventually got... I've read this twice. I can't remember any of the terminology. David sounds right.
I think David is the one that I thought was really pointless. He's the one that like takes her to that cathedral and is like randomly like once there like basically he was there to tell her that there was a rebellion once. And then he's like really mysterious for most of the book. And
okay, so maybe I mean David and Michael then, because
Michael's the one that works for Warden. He's the human that works.
Oh, that's not who I mean either.
The mute one.
It's just a random human that eventually gets kicked out in the street to live with the tarot card reader.
Jared, I think. No, it starts Julian.
Julian is totally.
And he doesn't even make it out in the end. He like dies.
Yeah, like I didn't feel like his character really did anything, and those other two characters probably could have been combined into one character. So I definitely agree with Rose.
Yeah, and I think apart from the characters who died, like I assume that David is being built up to do something in future books.
Because I think it was kind of implied that he somehow works with Scions. So.
Yeah.
Also, what was the name of the tarot card reader?
Liz.
Liz, yeah.
Honestly, she could have done more for me. Like she was there to up conflict in my mind. Like there was a good friend.
She was more there to like show the underbelly side of it. The pages.
How they lived. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the characters were just there to like serve a purpose.
Yeah.
This could have been more. That was one of the things I was pissed about was that like they'd go to all these risks to save her life, and then 20 pages later she dies, and they're just like down their magic potion now.
Yeah.
Like, did your getting healed only serve the purpose of getting rid of some of his magic potions? But I really, really liked her, which is part of why I was bummed, because I thought she was an awesome character. And when she's like reading the cards, I was like, the knives, what's the last card? What's the last card? I'm yelling a lot. I'm feeling very passionate.
Hey, this is so much better than the chats where all are just like, yes, this book was amazing.
I feel like with lists I was irritated because, and I know this is like, it's realistic, but it's frustrating to have them fight so hard to save her after she lost her cards and then have her die.
Yeah.
And like, I know that happens in real life. Like it's not like you only go through crap once and get saved and you are like okay after that. That's not how life works. But still, it was frustrating in the turn of the story where I'm like, yay, they saved Liz, and then
I felt like it wasn't a particularly meaningful death, which is realistic, like true to life, but
especially in like the big battles where somebody has to die. Like at the end of the book, stakes are high and everybody's fine. Nah.
But that was kind of like
she could have had a much more poetic death.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Actually, that's exactly how I feel, like off subject a bit, but that's exactly how I felt about the end of that Divergent series. Where it's like, yeah, you can get accidentally shot, kind of, and then just like die, and everything you've worked for is like, oh, whatever. But that happens in real life, but it shouldn't necessarily happen in a story because.
Yeah.
Especially after you've just defeated a death potion.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And that was the same thing with Liz, right? She just basically was saved, pulled out of like this near-death situation, only to be sort of have this pointless death, which is what I feel like really annoys me.
If you haven't read Allegiant, cover your ears.
Oh yeah, because all of our previous rants, they didn't hear.
Her name's wrong.
Oh my gosh. It can't be a coincidence.
She was making a point.
Allegiant was Allegiant even out when this book came out?
I don't think so.
It probably wasn't out when this book was being written, for sure.
No.
She was mad, like us. We're all going to have
I rage write books all the time.
for a minute in the book and die pointlessly.
Okay, so what else did we like? Because we all gave it decent ratings, but it's easy to get caught up in the frustrating bits.
Picking things apart.
The world was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, the whole time I was like, how did you come up with this? Where is this coming from?
I loved all the different kinds of unnaturals, I guess, like the book that Jackson wrote, which also, that's another thing, he was like, characters I love to hate, Jackson is right up there. That's how you say
Yeah.
I hated him.
I hated him, but I got her loyalty to him. It was in him.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for like conflict with him in the second one. Because at the end of this one, she's like, I quit, I'm not working for you. So I'm really excited for that.
And like when she realizes that he's not the hero that he's been making him out to be.
Yeah, like he came at the end to basically get his property back.
Yeah.
And like the whole "if I can't have you, no one can," like his like fingers tightening on her throat or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh jeez.
Yeah. Very excited for that. Yeah, he's one of those characters that I like hated, but I'm really glad he was one of my favorite characters in the book.
Yeah. You hate them, but like you hate them because they're like a realistic character.
Yeah, they're a necessary evil, I think.
Yeah. But there's characters you hate that you're not supposed to hate, but it's like the author's not doing them correctly, and there's characters you hate you're supposed to hate because the author's doing a good job.
Yeah, I think like I'm more excited for like the second book and future books to like go into that conflict and the conflict with like the government more than I was the conflict in this one. I feel like I wasn't that invested in, even though like I wanted them to be free, and you'd think you would get invested in that. Like I wasn't somehow invested in what they were doing in this one.
I found to me, Jackson is like way more of a compelling villain than
Nashira.
Nashira is, because she's just like she wants more power. Yeah, she's just evil, but he's like the main character likes him, like as a person, hopefully not romantically.
No, he's like conniving.
He's conniving, and like you've met people like that.
Yeah, and he's charming. Like he can talk people into things. Like I feel like he's very multi-dimensional, and Nashira was kind of just like, I'm evil. This is my evilness.
Yeah. Although at the same time, they both kind of think of Paige in the same way as a tool of what they can, what she can do for them, but she does it more dynamically.
It's interesting to see, like, with the contrast of how they act and go about it, and the contrast of how Paige feels about them. Because like Nashira, she's automatically like, I hate her, she's awful. While like Jackson, she like wants to get back to him and like defends him all the time.
Because that's her gang. Not just Jackson though, like the whole thing. Because that's her family basically.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. That's how gangs work, right? In general, is that this is your people, even though they're shitty, and there's no getting out of gangs unless you're dead, but they still think of them as their family, basically.
And like, especially in that world where like she doesn't really have any alternatives, so being in this gang has put her in a very high position, whereas the alternative was always whatever she thought happened to Unnaturals versus the Scion gang.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something else that's got me really excited for book 2 is that like the slavery world that she was in was really, really bad, but I don't necessarily feel like them getting on that train is taking them to a much better place.
Yeah.
So
like they now have like all these clairvoyants that they don't know what they're going to do with them.
I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Because you know Jackson's not going to just let them into his gang or anything, you know.
Yeah.
Although Jackson...
he didn't want them to come. He was like, why do I want to...
He just came for her,
Yeah. Interesting. Although you think he would want to use them, but where would you put them all, right? Like they're like underground hiding.
And he only wants the best of the best. He doesn't want.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's other clairvoyants that he sees and just no, I have no use for you. So but
he's a collector, really.
Are these guys the best of the best? Like a lot of them have some talent, but not all.
I wonder if we'll see in book 2 Jackson going through them and being like, you and you and you, the rest of you can shove off, you know, like going through them and testing them and stuff.
Whereas most of those people have been there for decades. Like they don't have anything to go back to.
And they talk about in this book the fact that most of the people who end up in Oxford or it's like Shoal, I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyway, they were the people who had nothing. That's like why they got caught, because they were on their own. Because they like talk about how they don't get many people from the gangs, and they want more people from the gangs because they're the better clairvoyants, but they can't rescue them because they're kept safe by their Time Lord.
Shield.
Shield.
I'm trying to remember how they said it in the audiobook.
I feel like that's an actual word.
It was SHEOL.
Oh, simply means the place of the dead, or the place of departed souls and spirits. The New Testament Greek.
That works nicely.
Yeah.
I thought you were just making up words, so that's cool.
The New Testament Greek equivalent to Sheol is Hades.
That makes it cooler.
That is cooler.
I thought I heard it somewhere before.
I've never heard it before.
I also super like bookends, like for a book. I'm always impressed with books that kind of like start the same way as they end. And so at the beginning of the book, you've got like this, you know that she's in a very dangerous situation because she's on that train and she could get caught. And it just like super ups that danger because suddenly there's hundreds of them on a train.
Yeah.
I
do love the idea of what she can do. Like when she first did it, I was like, that is so badass. Like basically like rip people out of their bodies almost, which is like really creepy and like, power.
Dreamwalker seems like a weird title for that.
Yeah.
Be
like Mind Walker.
I guess if they call them dreamscapes. They call like your mind dreamscape.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because dreams have been traditionally associated with something entirely different, which is walking around at night. In people's dreams.
This is like total personal preference, but I feel like I would have preferred for her to be less of a special snowflake. Like, she's rare, but she's met other people like her before, like they're out there. Because it's a trope that I'm tired of. Like,
but I feel like there's other like special snowflakes too. She's not like the ultimate be-all, end-all. There's also like the 7 seals, right? So like when Jackson first saw the guy who was, what is he called, a Fury or something? Like he made a huge deal out of him too. Like he was a special snowflake as well.
But I think it was just the fact that she was a special snowflake in S.H.I.E.L.D. because like they hadn't been able to get someone that powerful because they were all protected by the gangs.
Yeah, that was the first time.
I did feel like, while I'm sick of the trope, this story required it. Like, she would never be the 7 seals. She would never have been protected if Nashira didn't want her. Like, she had to be that special snowflake for any of this to have happened. which justifies it better to me. That, you know, sometimes it's okay for the stories to happen to people who, you know, the chosen one of some kind.
I feel like
that's why I don't hold that against the book that much, because I know that that's just a thing that I'm tired of.
Yeah, you hold it against all the other ones that used it unnecessarily that made this one be less special.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, there was like, it was kind of like double snowflake effect, because not only was she special, then she was chosen by Warden, who was also special. So everyone was like, oh my god, you are like owned by Warden, and like don't get in her way, or you don't want that getting back to him, and like all this stuff, right? So she was kind of regarded with this reverence in the camps and stuff. So that was kind of like the double snowflake effect. So that was probably why you like especially noticed it.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that part was necessary.
See,
that's the part that bugged me the most, was that he picked her out of all of them, and everyone needs to fear her now, even though no one's quite sure what she can do, but everyone fears her.
I think it could have been like, it could have occurred more naturally, because the way it is that he just like, she looks up and he's staring at her, and it's like, why? Because he thinks she's cute? That's kind of creepy. Like, is that what it is?
Oh, an alien.
Yeah, like, why does he hone in on her? Like,
because at that point they were already pretty sure she was a dreamwalker.
Okay, so he honed in on her because he wanted her to help start the rebellion. Yeah. I feel like that wasn't something that he...
I think he honed in on her for Nashira initially. Nashira wanted a dreamwalker.
Like, I think Nashira wanted a dreamwalker, so she honed in on her, and because of that, he was like, okay, I need to get her so Nashira can't get to her.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Now I understand.
All right.
Why does he always have her sleep in his bed?
Because her bed was awful. Because she kept getting injured.
Just give her a nicer bed. Like, it was so up. Of course, the second Nashira showed up, she was gonna know that she'd been sleeping in his bed.
Because she kept getting injured and he didn't want to carry her up the stairs to her room.
He's like, I'm really tired. Can you stop getting injured?
For real, she kept like getting hurt or getting like whipped by someone, and he'd like save her life and be like, okay, I guess you can sleep in my bed again.
You just keep doing this so you can sleep in my bed.
Yeah, and then he gets injured, and he's like, it's just kind of where the injured people go, I think.
Yeah.
She got injured just as much as she did.
Yeah, true.
I was really interested in the like bond she created, because that was one thing that like can be a trope. Like, suddenly they have this deep understanding. But I really liked the world of like, he saved her life 3 times, she saved his 3 times, and now they have a bond. Cool. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Like an actual physical bond too.
Yeah.
And then there was like a reason of something they did that made it happen, instead of like a lot of times it's just like, oh, it's just because we're soulmates and meant to be, so we have a bond.
And the physical bond worked within the world that had been created, like the string between the dreamscapes made sense. It wasn't just this unspoken power.
Comes from nowhere.
But will somehow be the crux of the entire series.
Yeah.
Special snowflake flower. Power. Wow. Don't you know?
Alright, so we've done plot, pacing, characters, writing, romance.
We've moved through it very, very quickly.
Yeah, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of comments today to get things going again. But
which is funny because it's such a complex book. I'm surprised we've gone through it so fast.
And we had a lot of feelings about it.
Yeah. Well, we can blame it on that there are only 4 of us today as well. That's
true.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are less opinions here. I feel like Kaylin would have had some stuff to say had she read the book.
I think Kaylin would have played passionately about this book.
I'm scared to know. Kaylin's our time in Cowl.
And Erica gave it 3.5 stars, and she doesn't generally rate low.
I don't feel like 3.5 is that low.
No.
1 star.
For me, 3 stars is like, I don't give 2 stars unless I hated the book. So for me, 3 stars is like, I had some big issues with this.
Yeah, I'm okay with books that I have issues with, and I'm okay with reviewing them like 3.5, 3 stars, because it's primarily if I still enjoyed them a lot and would recommend them. But I don't do 2 stars. I don't do 1 star at all on Goodreads, unless I have like an actual issue with the book, and I think it's like harmful or something. Like
Yeah.
for some
Oh yeah.
with like abusive protagonists or love interests and stuff, then I would say so.
Yeah.
But for me, for the most part, I won't rate if I didn't finish, and if it's going to be a 1-star for me, even a 2, I won't finish. There's too many other books to read. So.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet been faced with having to finish one because it's a book club pick, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I think I'd put it on Goodreads as a 3, just in case for future reference, but call it what it is.
I think we've all picked pretty good book club always, because like it's always something that someone's read, like one of us usually.
Yeah.
What's our next
This
one
one-
again?
It's Afterworlds by Scott Westerfeld, right?
No.
Yes, the one
No,
I
that's
have.
not. That's July. That's July.
Dang it! I have Afterworlds.
You and Erica both did that. May is Polaris Awakening Party, and June is Simon versus the Homo sapiens.
Oh, Simon versus the Homo sapiens. Okay, so that book is before Afterworlds.
So I figured Afterworlds is so big, we'll put that one behind the one that Simon is a quick read.
Okay.
You'll just like start reading and love.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so excited.
That makes sense.
Definitely heard good things
Oh,
about
man.
it.
I need to go
I think
spend
the
my birthday
bone
money.
season, I would only recommend to like someone with very specific tastes. Like it's not one that I want to shout that everyone in the world should read, because I want them to trust me to recommend books to them in the future.
I think I'd be like more likely to like recommend it to someone who reads a lot of like adult fantasy and sci-fi.
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
more complex stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's one of the reasons it's not really labeled YA. Like I don't think for some of my readers that are still reading things like Percy Jackson and stuff, I don't think I would recommend Bone Season to them because it's really it is complex. Like I was on the plane and I was like tired and I read it all in one go, but at parts I was like, okay, what's going on? Like I have to go back and be like and look at like the index and stuff, and like it's not, if you like really light easy reads, I guess
This
it's
is not that.
I think the complexity is part of why I really liked it and recommended it, because like it had the feel of YA that I like, but it was something a little more involved, which is nice to go into sometimes, especially looking at it from like a writing discussion, that there's a little more to it.
Yeah,
than just the
definitely.
Well, and
general-
honestly, if this was like a category that publishers said exists, this would be a new adult, which is
Totally.
Yeah,
but more complex.
It should be a new adult. I mean, why can't we just label it that? That's really dumb.
I feel like
It doesn't exist, except that you just published it and just called it something else. Okay.
And I love the character. She annoyed me a lot. She annoyed me a lot, but I still really, really liked her and like wanted her to do well. I just wanted her to see reason.
I feel like that's the reason that I think of it as YA, like a little bit over onto the YA spectrum, is because of that character. Like, she felt very YA to me.
Although, realistically, 19-year-olds aren't exactly a pinnacle of reason either.
I think that's like part of why it seems so new adultish to me, because there was still very much like the act of finding yourself in this society.
Yeah,
true. Very true.
I think I like it better looking at it as a new adult fantasy than like an existence, like it doesn't exist as far as publishers are concerned. But
I'm gonna start writing about that again. But I felt like for sure I was like 19, and I definitely was a little bit like I was really whiny, and I felt like I was really shallow, and like
add into that everyone telling you that you're a special snowflake, and I'm sure you would. Like, it's hard not to be Paige.
Of course I am.
Yeah. No one wants to be a Paige, but everyone is.
Yeah. Except Paige was legitimately a special snowflake.
Yeah, she had
in some pretty dire circumstances. So.
I feel like I probably would have been a lot more whiny and not survived if I was in her position at 19. Be dead in the first like 2
chapters. Way too many like eye rolls and just like.
I would have rolled my eyes at like the Ashira or whatever her name is. And she was just,
like who are you?
That'll be the end of. Who do you think you are? Oh my god.
Can I go take a nap now?
Napping was a big part of me at 19.
Where's the Wi-Fi in this place? And that would be the end of me.
And I'm not sure what this says about me, but like at 19, I would have just been like, oh, I need to get on the train. Okay, bye guys. Out of here. You can come with me if you want, but I'm not going to go out of my way.
Yeah.
Crazy rebellion.
I think so too. And the worst part is I would have been like, those guys are all dorks and nerds. I'm getting on the train. I don't care about them. I'm pretty sure that's what I would have been like. Oh, God.
Oh.
All right. Well, any final comments? We all might keep reading the series. I will. Keep reading the series. I'm going to keep listening to the series.
Mm-hmm. I'm buying all 7 books.
I think
I want to know what
very much on the next book for me. Like, how good is the next book?
Yeah.
Because that will be make or break.
Yeah, I have the second book already as an ebook, so I'm going to give it a try, and we'll see how I feel after that. I might end up listening to the rest of them and waiting until more of them are out.
Yeah, that's what I kind of wish I'd done, because 7 books, I'm not going to remember.
A lot of books.
Like, I'll probably
That's so
remember
funny.
book 1, but book 2, book 3, by book 7, who knows?
7 books to me is like, meh, because I like seriously grew up reading like Robert Jordan and stuff, where it's like these 72 book series. Oh, he died before he could finish it. Oops. Like, 7 books isn't that big deal.
I always just think about, like, my age. Like, at the point when the last book would come out. Like, oh my god.
Like, am I still going to be into this kind of thing at that point in my life?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you will. Probably.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm gonna grow up much more than this.
No, I think I'm done.
No, I've finished maturing. Not
This
at
is
all.
it. This is what you're all stuck
to
with.
pay my bills, and no one can make me do anymore.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Should we call it a night then?
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the book?
No.
Read it.
Read it.
You'll probably
Yeah.
like.
If you like complex, kind of like YA, kind of, sort of fantasy slash
Yeah, if you're
sci-fi,
feeling
probably.
like a new adult fantasy sci-fi sort of.
Yeah.
And you want something really different.
It's
Yeah,
really,
this is
yeah.
really
Yeah, like
And
if
I
you feel
love
like you're in
the
a
cover.
rut and you need to mix it up.
Yeah, if you're like, I've read
Yeah.
like tons of aliens, tons of paranormal, tons of like fantasy, and you want something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
the
what I
cover's
liked about
gorgeous,
this.
Just
Yeah, that's what I think I liked about this book the most, is that it was so different,
Yeah.
and it
There
like
was-
really surprised me.
Yeah, there was no book that I could be like, oh, this is
No.
a lot like this other book I've read. Or heard
Yeah, I
of.
couldn't
Yeah.
even do like an X meets X
Yeah.
with this book,
Yeah.
aside from saying it's like supernatural people in concentration camps. Like that's the closest I've come to like an actual like describing it.
yeah. Weirdly
But,
enough,
yeah.
I have read 2 or 3 books in my internship that I feel like would be really good comp titles to this.
So
Yeah,
funny.
so I don't know
But
if
not
the books
published,
like
right?
ushered that in. No.
Yeah.
Ushered it in, or if it's like a trend that's coming. But
Interesting.
Or it's people who saw how well this one sold and started writing books like it.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
Yeah.
that happens all
So, I
the
mean,
time.
this book hasn't been out for that long. So,
Well, I know between this book and another book I recently read and loved even more, which was written and read by Anne Bishop, I'm changing my current epic fantasy into more of a modern fantasy. Like, it'll still have the epic fantasy scope, but I wanted to more of a, put it in an actual, like, modern city that it just happens to be an alternate Earth kind of thing. Because
Cool.
it feels fresher than a lot of, there's more you can
Yeah.
do with it that hasn't been done a million
Yeah.
times. Which,
I've read one other book that was kind of like an alternate history. It's called The Ring and the Crown. I can't remember the name of the author. But it's supposed to, like, it's basically like if Merlin was real and like never died and had been like advising all the kings and queens of England and there was like actually magic. It was interesting.
Oh,
That's cool.
Yeah. I really liked the idea and I ended up not liking the book itself.
Oh,
It wasn't what it made it so happy.
I do
Yeah.
like how the bone.
Marissa Meyer, I think. Something like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, Marissa Meyer is...
She writes like the Blue Bloods
Cinder.
books.
Cinder. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, no, wrong one.
Melissa De La
Dela
Cruz.
Cruz, yeah, it was by her.
Ah, yeah.
And it just wasn't what it sold itself to be, I feel like.
Hmm.
I don't know, I was disappointed. But it was a cool idea. I like that idea of like an alternate history type thing.
I do too.
Where like
yeah.
one thing is different, in
Mhm.
history and like what the world's like.
Everything.
yeah. And it's
Like,
so cool to be like, oh, I recognize this a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know
this
what
is London,
Frank
but with,
Sinatra, what are
Sort
you
of.
doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like because like you get stuff that like takes place in the real world, but there's like a secret thing going on. But this is like no, this is just like how it is.
Like it's not just a
Yeah.
paranormal with like
yeah, the world is
Yeah.
different.
where you don't know this is going on. It's like no, this is different. Everybody knows that. It's
Yeah. I really like that, and I like the way that she did it. Instead of doing like, oh, this is current times, it was like we found out about them in 2000 whatever, and this is like 56 years later or whatever into the future. I like that. So it's like, so we could be just going along here in 2015, and then 4 years later we could discover that there's
Actually, I think it happened in like the 1800s, but yeah.
Oh, did it? Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's supposed to be
like
like one of the
right.
King Edward or somebody, King somebody.
Oh, okay. So it's just like this
King-
totally.
King-
Because it's been 200 years because they're celebrating the bicentennial. That's
Yeah,
like the
right.
celebration.
Yeah, so it'd been a bit longer than that, but
So
still,
it's like
it's the same
1850,
idea.
1850s,
Yeah.
I think is when.
I like that idea for
Yeah,
like
still cool
future
idea.
books that I would write too, because I feel like the whole Harry Potter thing where you walk in, it's like London, it's normal London, and you walk into this hole in the wall and there's no magical world. Like I love it, but it's overdone, right? Like
Especially after Harry Potter.
Especially after Harry Potter, like City of Bones does that too, where it's like suddenly she can see these supernatural beings that exist
Twilight,
Twilight, yeah. Every
pretty
book
much every
ever.
like supernatural.
Yeah, pretty much every urban fantasy, every paranormal romance.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
This is hardcore fantasy, just a different time period that it doesn't always have to be medieval.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be hidden either. Like it can be what it is. It's just
It can be in the real world, and
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
It's very cool.
Yeah. All right. On that note, we will call it a night. Thank you for watching, anyone who was watching, and we will see you next week when we're talking about something.
Something.
Bye.
Bye.